Welcome back to the booth here. My name is Anurag Das. I'm here with Julian Knapp. We're going into round 4 out of 7 here today at the NRG Series trial in Fort Wayne. It's a 10K. It's a team trial. We got Modern. We got Legacy. We got Pioneer. Later on today, we're going to be joined by Devin Wake and Mason Clark, two brilliant Magic players, and I'm looking forward to watching that as well. But right now, we've got an exciting match coming up for you, audience. Thank you so much. It's a pretty cool one. It's Legacy, and I'm already excited. Julian, what's the matchup?
So the matchup is actually going to be Mono-Red Painter against Blue-Red Delver. And dude, I couldn't be more hyped for this. I've been playing the Painter deck for quite a while. My co-host on the Everyday Tournament podcast, Callum Smith, has put forward a list that he feels very strongly about, that he has had a ton of success with. And guess what? This is actually going to be 1-to-1 exactly that kind of deck that Callum has been putting forward. Callum recently got a top 16 in a big event in Europe. I'm blanking on the name, but Jasper's the first name. He literally won that event in England playing this exact list, and they feel so strongly about this list, and I've been playing this list as well, so I'm super excited to see this one in action right now.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at in this sort of deck list, but why don't you start by telling me a little bit about what this deck does and what some of the iconic cards that are specific to Legacy are in this list?
So traditionally, we have had many iterations of Painter Servant in Legacy over the last decade. The core concept is you use Painter Servant, which turns every card in the game, every card in the libraries, everywhere into a color in addition to what it is. And then you use Grindstone, which is an artifact that mills the top 2 cards of your opponent. And if they share a color, then you repeat that. So guess what? All of the cards are the same colors. So you mill their entire deck with the activation of Grindstone. You can do that as early as, let me lie, turn 2. Turn 1 Painter, turn 2 Grindstone activation. That's the threat. Now, this deck, the way Callum has built it is, it's super grindy. You have so many small ways to generate advantage through, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but most importantly, one of my favorite cards that have existed in Magic as a whole, Goblin Welder, which allows you to switch artifacts from the graveyard to the main to the battlefield. And especially in this matchup in Izzet Delver, like it can be rather hard to combo out your opponent, because of course, once you activate Grindstone, if your opponent removes the Painter, then you're just gonna mill them for like 2 or 4, depending on like what you hit. And that's like quite the dedication mana-wise and card-wise. So a lot of times the Painter deck will play out in just like a value way. You would just like get your creatures down, and we sometimes affectionately call it the best goblin deck in the format, because you play a ton of goblins, and if
you know that Eli is just like rolling over right now all the way in the EU, yeah.
Yeah, interestingly, this Painter deck, like the big thing about this Painter deck, it has moved into the mid-range direction, whereas Goblins, which traditionally was like a very mid-range, sometimes people even called it controlish deck in Legacy, now has a combo aspect to it. So in that regard, those decks are moving closer strategically and are trying to do not technically the same, but strategically play out surprisingly similar. But as we speak, here's my favorite creature, one of my favorite creatures in all of Magic, Goblin Welder on the first turn, and now that one is active. And this is just like playing out the way you would really like it to. You got that Saga. So what you can sometimes do is you can run out the Painter here. And guess what? If John actually like dazes the Painter, yeah, you can just like get it back eventually if you want to with the Goblin Welder, because you already have an artifact land in play. And that's which the Saga can eventually turn into a Grindstone. And with all of that, you can just establish the combo rather quickly. And what I love so much about what John is doing here, John is saying, yeah, technically I could have the kill really quickly here. But once you've played the deck a lot, you can start trusting your deck that you can literally just go and grind them out. So instead of like trying to force a combo line, we're removing the Delver, that's giving us more breathing room. We're getting the Soul Guide Lantern down, removing a card from the graveyard. That's going to make it harder to hit Delirium, to get a Murktide. So yeah, John is just sitting back, probably just gonna make a couple of like tokens of the Urza Saga, which especially in the first game are so incredibly hard for. Oh, I just realized they're both named John, Mr. Stokes and Mr. Hata. So Delver is going to have a really hard time dealing with the constructs, because in the second and third game we might see Meltdown, which is the one thing I almost want to say that keeps the stack in check. And I pretty much stand by that, because I think this is one of the best decks in the format right now. And now, Anurag, you might come in and say, hey, that's all cool, but what about Murktide? Like, I don't even see any flyers. Wouldn't Murktide just like murder this deck? Yes, and that's one of the most common ways to lose. But now guess what? We play something like 7 Red Blasts, like 4 Pyroblasts, 3 Red Elemental Blasts, and that's gonna be like just one of the most efficient ways, I wanna say, of dealing with a Murktide. Like, even though your opponent only paid 2 for the Murktide, the graveyard is not infinite. Eventually, your opponent runs out of like graveyard, and you are still sitting there with like 7 Pyroblasts. So, dude, this is just like amazing on so many levels. We haven't even touched on the interaction that once Delver is in play, once Painter is in play, you name blue, everything turns blue. Guess what? Now you have 7 Vindicates in your deck. You can destroy any permanent on the battlefield with it. It's this is literally the deck I'm building right now, and I have
You
so much.
can't see Julian's face right now, but he's so he's like a proud father looking, at his son. But yeah, so looking at the board state now, Goblin Welder has been in place since turn 1. Painter Servant also in place. Soul Guide Lantern as well. Urza Saga has ticked up to 2, and we can see on Greer-Stokes' first turn. Third turn rather, they are casting a Brainstorm. There's a Surveil trigger on the stack, and the hand looks pretty nice here. Daze, Forcible, Pyroblast, Murktide, Expressive Iteration, all key elements to this tempo deck.
Interestingly, guess what? Oh, the name just changed. Greer-Stokes. Okay, I'm confused, but we're gonna call him Greer. And that's the main deck Pyroblast that we usually, I guess, these days see in Izzet Murktide. And if Painter actually named blue, as it usually does, especially in the first game, then that Pyroblast might try and stop the combo that John is gonna assemble next turn by having Grindstone. And that's in turn again, there's just like so many levels to playing Painter, especially against Delver. You would think, oh, I get Grindstone, I'm just going to activate Grindstone, I'm going to mill you. You don't even have to do that. You can literally sit back, keep 3 mana available, and be like, you know what? At any point that you don't show me your open red mana, I can just like kill you with Grindstone. So the Delver player all of a sudden, like, it's almost like their red source is pinned, and they can never like try to tap it. Not sure if that's the line Sean wants to go for. Like I said, especially in the first game, there's usually only like 1 or sometimes 2 Pyroblasts available in the Delver deck. But if you're not under any threat, you would at least do it in the opponent's upkeep. And I haven't even. That's just like too many levels, Anurag. You have to stop me at some point.
Oh no, I'm enjoying this. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'll get a chance to talk first, but like I'm also like, don't stop, because this is all the depth in this matchup. You're definitely like highlighting like the layers to this onion, if you will. So.
Yeah. And I was going to say, even if the Pyroblast takes out the Painter, then the Welder can bring it back again. Now, that Wasteland is crucial. That Wasteland is absolutely crucial, because that means there's no Grindstone next turn. Sean still very much in the driver's seat. Great position here. Basically, he has everything up that he might ever need. But yeah, now Greer is actually at least has averted a quick demise, and it's probably just going to pass back. I don't know. Look, no, actually, we can't even attack here. That's
Okay,
interesting. Oh, that's usually that shouldn't work unless we actually it might. Okay, guess what? So we can sacrifice our Soul Guide Lantern and then weld out the Painter, and then the Pyroblast doesn't do anything. And I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, okay, got it. And that is a pretty powerful tool here. You mentioned Soul Guide Lantern, not Soul Guide Lantern, but Goblin Welder just being one of the all-stars in this show. Yeah, so Pyroblast was targeting the Goblin Welder. Painter gets put into the graveyard or welded into the graveyard in exchange for the Soul Guide, and now it is no longer blue, so the Pyroblast is going to fizzle, and this just goes to show you the power, the flexibility, all the shenanigans that make this deck so interesting, right? And wow, this is a great one too. Fable of the Mirror Breaker coming down on turn 4.
Yeah, Fable's another card. That deck really, traditionally these red decks, I mean, at the core, it's somewhat Stompy-esque. Oh, and that's gonna be met with a Pyroblast. Yeah, that's amazing. They didn't have the greatest selection, right? Okay, and I guess. Oh man, we cannot make mana. There's no Lotus Petal in the graveyard. So I was talking about how there's a lack of selection, and sometimes you just like variance gets you. This is a great tool, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, 2 degrees variance. And I mean, we've seen it as an all-star in pretty much every format that's ever been legal in. And yeah, we'll get to it if it ever hits the battlefield, but there's just like so many small things you can do it as well. Just like the fact that you get to generate an artifact every single turn is just like a great thing you can do here. But for now, I would guess that Dragon Witch Channeler is flying. See, so what we could have done here is Shrek the
I don't
Lantern,
actually think it does. I see Forest Day, Scalding Tarn, and a
we could have killed it
Pyroblast.
with. Then we could have killed it with by welding in the painter from the graveyard, right? Maybe I mean there's some reason not to do that. I guess if you're scared of like lightning bolt or something, but we could have tried to eat it. On the other hand, yeah, we will see. Okay.
So drawing a card here, cycling the Soul Guide Lantern, picking up a Lightning Bolt. That's pretty good. Things on my radar right now from the painter side of things is well, I'm worried about top decked what is it called, Murktide regions. That's gonna be pretty scary. But otherwise, it feels like if this board state is at parity, we have the tools to, or Painter has the tools to pull ahead here. Lightning Bolt's going to go ahead and take care of the Dragon's Rage channeler right now, prevent any future surveils here, and
Yeah.
that's a good place to be.
So one of the big tensions in the matchup, especially in the first game, I feel like, is do you use your Soul Guide Lantern to like draw extra cards, or do you use it to basically forego that card draw to make sure that your opponent is not going to cast Murktide? Like you mentioned here, right? Murktide could be a really big problem here because right now we can't deal with it, and we would probably die to it in 2 swings. We have a lot of outs to it, but I mean, you don't always draw them, especially without the Fail of the Mirror Breaker. On the other hand, if you draw more cards with your Soul Guide Lantern and eventually your Ancient Den and not Ancient Den, what's it called? Great Furnace can be converted into card advantage through Welder and Soul Guide Lantern. It's a trade-off you have to consider, especially now that Greer has cast a Brainstorm. It makes it somewhat more likely that there could be a Murktide in hand, and yeah, it's. I can't tell you what the best play is. Like, I play this deck almost every single day on Magic Online, and it's one of those tough calls. And it looks like John is going to be like, you know what? They're just going to get rid of your graveyard. There's
I
not
like
going to
this
be any
line a lot.
Murktides anytime
Yes.
soon, and that looks good. That's probably a Delver here, right? Yeah.
Yep, Delver coming into play here. Forcible was the draw for the turn, so no blue card for it, but that's pretty good. Hey, listen, if you're watching right now in the audience, I want to hear from you. Who do you think is going to win this first game? It's, one if you think Painter, 2 if you think Delver. As we see, okay, Simian Spirit Guide coming into play now. The 2/2 bear going to maybe protect our life total a little bit. Delver does not flip. Can we get the job done here? 1 for Painter, 2 for Delver. Or even if you tell me what's your favorite deck here? Which one do you like more? I mean, I know my answer, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer for most people. But the sweet thing, and it's the Simian beatdown. Okay, here we go. What's scarier than 1 Simian Spirit Guide? 2 Simian Spirit Guides. Let's go.
The Ape Assault. This deck has so many hidden modes. You know what I would love to draw? I would love to draw something like a Goblin Engineer. Of course, at this part, we might even go try to steer it towards the combo. But what I like to do against Painter very much is just to get Breya's Apprentice. And I think Breya's Apprentice is one of those cards where people look at the deck list and they're like, what is this card even doing? And guess what? Everything. Breya's Apprentice, that's your card advantage engine. That's your one-sided holding mine. That's your way to generate tons of flying tokens to chump block Murktide every single day of the week. So this is the card I want to see the most right now. Like, I literally want. I mean, yeah, I guess Grindstone would win the game, but I mean, I know
I was about to say hot take. I'd like to see Grindstone more, but let's be real. Breya's Apprentice would be way cooler on this board state.
Yeah, and once that gets into, like, I've had game sets where at some point, like, the Izzet player would just like scoop because you were just like welding in and out Breya's Apprentices left and right, and especially in the first game
Does
when they
this
don't
even
have meltdown.
feel good?
Yeah, very much so.
Petty theft bouncing a Simian Spirit Guide. Okay, Delver's gonna flip to. What the heck is that card?
Is it like a lightning bolt? I don't know. No, it's something we can. Yeah, it's like. Oh, dude, I totally guessed that.
Good job, Jay. Good job. I have no idea what this artwork is, but it's pretty cool here. Lightning bolt for the Goblin Welder is very clutch here on this board state, and looks like we're evaluating options here. Hata going to see what we can weld back into play with the Goblin Welder. If we do weld something into play, it is going to cost us our Great Furnace, though. So now we have, technically, we have red mana, but it's just the Simian Spirit Guide. It's a one-shot kind of deal here, so.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. If we want to cast more spells, then of course that's going to hit our life total. And like 10 is just like so much more better than 9 against Delver. Well, we are on 7 then. Yeah, but 7 is still, it's the same thing, right? It's better than 6. And we do have Pyroblast, so we might just like upkeep maybe or Pyroblast to Delver. I guess if you upkeep Pyroblast, then you could get Force of Negation. But either way, we have an out to the Delver, and that's pretty important. We can also attack for 7 here, for 6 here, taking the opponent down to 7. And I would guess that would be an upkeep. Wait, what's this? Are we both attacking at the same time? Sweet.
Okay. So it looks like Simian Spirit Guide entering the red zone here. Now Delver going to come back in. Pyroblast being cast on the Delver of Secrets here, exiling the Simian Spirit Guide to create red mana. And I would have to assume the Delver might actually, honestly, in this board state, Painter on blue is probably not good, right?
It's Callum has a big primer coming up about the deck where he talks a lot about like whether to name blue at all instances or not, and a lot of times you actually don't. And here it looks like blue was named, and that's gonna make it so that's gonna be a little bit harder for Tron to actually. Oh, where we just pack it in. Too
Oh
bad.
wow, yeah, it looks like the Ancient Tombs may be doing a bit too much damage to our life totals, not able to win the race here. But yeah, the downside of naming blue in this matchup is you turn on your opponent's main deck Pyroblast, bleh, and then I guess the other is that you turn on their Force of Wills too, because all cards in the hand become blue as well, or the chosen color, and that means your Scalding Tarn is now no longer just colorless; it is a blue fetch land, and Force of Will says, "Hey, I don't care if you're a fetch land, I don't care if you're a cantrip. If you're blue, I will put you in the exile zone to cast this card for free." So there are real downsides. We can see in this sort of situation here how it sort of happened. Now, this is really interesting, the dynamic of what to name with Painter. Do you think in the post-board games we'll expect to see blue be named?
But it depends on the board, right? If you're sitting on a bunch of blasts and you want to counter something like a meltdown, then yes. But other than that, a lot of cards that you care about, they're already blue by design, so you wouldn't even need to name it. And you do sometimes name red, because then you can actually pitch a bunch of cards to Fury, and Fury is another big card in the matchup that is able to take out a lot of the opponent's threats.
Okay, so we're diving into Pioneer here. What looks to be mono white versus mono green. From what I can tell, mono green down a game.
Oh, is it? Interesting.
Oh, that's my
I-
best guess. My best guess. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, so mono green down a game here, and turn 1 Oath of Nissa is always a good start here when you're playing against mono green. It's not ramp. That's pretty good, but it usually means a sign of the turn 2 Wolf Willow. So that's what we're seeing here, and yeah, powerful stuff here, ramping to turn 3, where you finally get to unlock some of your more powerful cards in the matchup. So, for example, like 4/4 Old Growth Troll, or even like Kiora to maybe untap your Wolf Willow to ramp out the next turn. But this is a really aggressive start for the mono white side of things. A lot of 1-drops presenting a lot of questions here. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm by no means a Pioneer expert. I thought that Mono Green would enjoy this kind of matchup, but yeah, like you mentioned, if Max gets like a really aggressive start, as he did here, I can certainly see Mono White just like stealing a game from Mono Green, and as it actually happened here in the first game.
Okay, now check this out. Turn 3, there's an Old Growth Troll, but we don't actually have a third land drop, so there's a clear bottleneck. This is both scary and a sigh of relief in the sense of, that just means that Daniel's hand is all action, no lands. But if you can't cast lands and you stumble, this is a great opportunity to sort of take advantage of the board. Now, the problem is Old Growth Troll pretty well statted here. A 4/4 and a 1/2 and a bunch of 1/1s walk into a bar. That's the joke, right? Like, sorry, 2/1s. I apologize. That is certainly very tricky. So we'll have to see if there's a removal spell like no, there are no Skyclave apparitions in the deck here. What is our best way to punch through this
Well,
4/4? It looks like we
I
can't.
guess
We just
technically
evoke 4.
Brave the Elements, but that would be a bit of waste. Other than that, like, what do we have post board? Declaration in Stone, I guess, could take it out. Yeah, nothing too exciting, really. And I guess every turn that Max spends not attacking is good for Daniel, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good question too. We'll just circle back to who is the beatdown in this matchup. Is it the aggressive low curve mono white deck, or is it the mid rangey mono green deck? As you can see, Love Struck Beast here coming into play here. Now that's an old one that I feel like I haven't seen in a hot while. Love Struck Beast and Heart's Desire. Um, from like, just of formats past, but still pretty powerful here. And honestly, a little bit of a variance from your stock list that you normally see for mono green. I feel like mono green, one of those decks that's like largely solved at this point, at least for the main deck. So to see Lovestruck Beast here with the 1/1 in play off of Heart's Desire is quite nice.
Yeah, Lovestruck Beast, I don't know. I kind of enjoy the card so much. It's, I mean, who couldn't love that artwork, right? That's, oh man. But yeah, right now both players really just like setting up for what they really want to do. Of course, in Mono White's case, that's just like attacking. And we talked about this a little bit in the past that sometimes the Mono White deck, the Mono White Humans deck, kind of works like the Rebels deck worked in Standard like 22 years ago, where you just like build up a bunch of creatures, and then all of a sudden you get, in this case, Brave the Elements, back then Reverent Mantra, and give protection from your opponent's cutter, and just like Alpha Strike for the win. And in the absence of any kind of good removal spell on Max's side, I mean, I guess that's gotta be your game plan. It's
Okay,
not a
well,
very
this is a,
convincing
this
game
is a
plan at
big
best.
turn here coming down for the mono green side of things. We're Storm the Festival off of a Nykthos that's generating what 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, just so much mana, 5 at least. Yeah, this is going to be pretty brutal here as another copy of Old Growth Troll comes into play, and I believe we have what? Oh no, maybe not. Let's see. Oh, okay, Cavalier and maybe Elvish Mystic are the pickups. Either way, it does not feel good from the mono white side of things, where now the board is just getting so gummed up with all these high power and toughness creatures that you can't really easily attack through. That I think Daniel might have this game close to wrapped up here. We'll see if there's anything else or extra that comes down that might be a saving grace here from the human side, but it's looking grim.
Yeah, and that's why I was a little bit surprised when you told me that Mono White Humans actually was up a game, because this is how I usually expect the matchup to play out, right? Where there's just like a bunch of like smaller creatures not being able to attack past the bigger creature, and that buying so much time for Mono Green to do all the busted big mana stuff that Mono White just like can't keep up with at that point. I guess if Max had been able to get in a couple of early beats, like get Daniel down like to half of what we see right now here, then there might be a way to do it. But like once the well, what we consider, I guess, the control deck in format starts attacking even into you know you're behind, and with just one card in hand, Max position doesn't really seem all that great here.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
props
not
though
even
for, props for the Final Fantasy planes.
yeah, not even the control deck in the matchup, just in this matchup, right? Like definitely, like the idea is to stabilize before your opponent puts you in that tight bind, as mono white generally tends to do, right? It's not just the value of the creatures in and of themselves with the 2/1s and it's the additional abilities that each creature brings to play and their ability to go wide. So I'm talking like the versatility of like Brutal Cathar or the resilience of something like Dauntless Bodyguard, right? Those are the kind of things that make mono white so powerful. However, being able to actually punch through that damage usually only happens with something like protection, and that is going to be pretty tricky because at this point there's not just one, there's not just two, there's three, really 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 good defensive and offensive creatures. And honestly, it makes me wonder, a couple turns ago, you see that portable hole in play that is hovering over a Wolf Willow Haven. Makes me wonder if that portable hole should have just gone after the soldier token, the one that is that was earlier on enabling the Love Shark Beast, because now that we have Eldritch Mystic in play, I guess it doesn't really matter. So it's really interesting. I don't know if that one change would have made a big difference or not, based on the board state, but no matter what, I think we can all agree that right now Daniel mono green looking very favored here in this game too.
Yeah, and looks like it's gonna force a game 3, and this one should be over pretty quickly as we sacrifice our body card to keep our creature alive against a big giant flagship. Like, can you imagine how that works out flavor-wise? You have this big giant flagship, like probably shooting a beam of lightning at you, and the bodyguard is like, I got this.
Yeah. Let's see if we can pan back to Legacy right now, because I'd love to take a look at how that mono red painter versus Izzet Delver matchup is going, as mono green will even the score up in the Pioneer portion of the team event here. Looks like mountains and a ley line of the void. That's okay. That's really interesting. And a 2/2, dude. This Simian Spear, we just walk in at the perfect time where we just get to see the monkey business going on down Dragon's Rage Channel in play with the Wasteland and an island and a volcanic from the other side of the table.
Yeah, maybe it's not even the best goblin deck in the format, but it's also like the best monkey, simian, ape deck, what have you, in the format. Leyline of the
JPA
Void.
is looking at you just like with very stern eyes right now.
Oh, dude, we haven't seen Sneak Show do all that much lately, but the deck is always very capable of just like blowing anyone out. That's true. Interesting that we see Leyline of the Void here. Of course, very, very good if you have it in the opening hand. Takes out the basically Murktide Tyrant, Murktide Regent as a whole, and also relegates the Dragon Rage Channel to just like being 1-1 with Surveil 1 forever. Pretty good. I know Callum, I think, actually recommends -1 Lotus Petal, +1 Fury to add the third Fury, but I also did it. Like, before I read this guide, I also would often bring in the ley lines, and I think it's actually, like, not one of those things where I would say, oh, this is bad. I think this is maybe even... I don't know. I don't want to contradict my mentor who told me everything about the deck, but Leyline very, very powerful in the matchup, and as we see it working out here, because right now, is it ever, like, just dealing 1 damage a turn while you're facing down a bigger monkey.
I mean, it gives you so much time, you know what I mean? When you don't have to worry about Murktide Regent, when you don't have to worry about Dragon's Rage, you're literally winning the race on this board state, which is kind of absurd to think about. Now, that being said, you know, there are a lot of other factors you need to consider. Expressive Iteration for sure. Hydro Blast is a pickup here. That's a pretty good draw here, in addition to Force of Will. I believe we saw some number of Red Blasts in the post-board configuration, one in Exile at least.
Yeah, dude. Greer's hand here is like absolutely stacked. We saw a Meltdown in there. We are casting the Expressive Iteration in here. We saw a Hydroblast, right? Which became really, really popular in Legacy now that Minskin Boozer card. And with John's hand, from what I've seen, being very underwhelming, I think we saw a Soul Guide Lantern and a Grindstone, which both don't really do all that much here. I would almost go as far as to say I might want to be on Greer's side of the board here, but I mean, yeah, technically we have a problem and that we are losing the race, but we can still find Delver, right? Or even like a second copy of Dragon Rage Channeler. So
it's still funny. You were losing the race to a 2/2. That's all right. That's like peak Delver, peak Legacy, right? Like you've got some of the most broken cards in the history of Magic. You got Expressive Iteration, Force of Will, Daze. Who's gonna win? All of that, or just like one Monkey Boy? You know what I mean? Like.
So yeah, the Monkey Boy. I wonder if we'll eventually get to a point where the Monkey Boy actually gets blasted or lightning bolted. I'm not seeing it yet. Okay, we are just digging deeper. Something I have done, but on rare occasions, and I think not in this matchup, is you get to literally just like mill out your opponent with the Grindstone, and when you don't have to fear the Murktide, you can literally just, you know, go and start milling your opponent. Greer is still very far from actually being milled out. But honestly, like as we talk about like the winning or losing the race, if John just stays back with the Simian Spirit Guide and puts a Grindstone to the table and keeps using Grindstone, then that's actually the race.
Yeah. So Ponder going to see Force. That's a quick shuffle here from Greer-Stokes. And now we find Delver found off of the shuffle here. So Misty Rainforest going to be cracked, going down to, what, 16 potentially? And Delver Secret's finally going to enter play. Now the game is going to get a little bit faster pace here, dialing up the heat in this cooking channel that is brought to you by the NRG. I'm kidding. Okay, no. By the NRG series. If you haven't already, hit that follow button to show some love here. Delver of Secrets and Dragon's Rage channel. Honestly, name a more iconic duo.
So this is actually kind of cool. We are running out the City of Traitors. And if Greer is actually willing to wasteland that, I think John is gonna be pretty happy, because one of the ways to really like pull ahead in the game for John would be to draw Nurse's Saga. And of course, that really doesn't do anything as long as Greer is sitting on the wasteland over there. So right now, we have the Grindstone, and as long as the Grindstone stays in play, it also creates a scenario where John could literally just, you know, rip Painter's Servant from the top and threaten a kill. Of course, we know that wouldn't really work all that easily because Greer actually has quite a lot of counterplay. But if John, for example, let's say ripped a painter named, I don't know, Black, turns everything black, then the Hydroblast on Greer's side wouldn't even stop that. Interesting. Okay, we got a reader. I'm trying to imagine like in what that would telegraph reading it, but I guess it's just like making sure that's just like how it works.
Yep, you can see Grindstone here on the screen here. 1 mana artifact that you can tutor off of Urza Saga, but do 3 tap, target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. If both cards share a color, repeat the process.
Yeah. The one thing that makes me concerned for John here is that right now, Greer is eventually winning on board with the Diver. That's just like literally your best card when the opponent has Leyline of the Void. And Greer also has protection. We know at least about the Hydroblast, which is huge because John doesn't have anything relevant in hand at all. And there's also a Forceful that I saw that might have a pitch card. So John basically needs at least 2, maybe 3 business cards to really pull back into the game. And of course, one way to play around all of those cards would be versus Saga. But yeah, as long as Greer is not firing that Wasteland on the City of Traitors, that's not happening either.
Yeah, so from this position, I'm actually just wondering, like, with the layers of insulation that are here from the Delver side of things, what are the perfect set of draws potentially that
Well, honestly,
John...
right now, if I'm John, I would like to draw something that's easy to resolve. Maybe just like a couple of Pyroblasts to get rid of the Painter, because the Painter I care so much about. Okay, that already feels pretty good. I mean, we're probably not in a position to win with a top deck Painter. I mean, John doesn't know that, but we know that from knowing Greer's hand. But trading just like a not that important grindstone. Oh, okay, that's great. Against one of your opponent's best cards, that's amazing. Okay, that's Twin Shot Sniper. So we can do 2 things with Twin Shot Sniper. We can either hardcast it, which is going to take down the Diver as it shoots 2 damage as it comes into play, or we can cycle it. So if we cycle it, it's guaranteed unless the opponent has like a Stifle. If we hardcast it, of course, we get the upside of having that creature in play, but now it can be Hydroblasted.
Yeah, exactly. I love this. Choosing not to... Oh, and especially revealing to the Forcible here, yeah, not casting the Twin Shot Sniper here, so you can see the multi-modes on the screen there. Now you can just cycle it, get a card, and then also kill the Delver Secrets, and this is great. This is a huge exchange here for John Hata. Also putting in the graveyard.
Oh, that's not gonna work. It looks like Greer is trying to force for it. No, that doesn't work.
Yep,
and that's very heads up play from John, right? John noticed that Greer wasn't even doing anything with his mana until he drew Delver. So that very much tells me there are no cantrips, there are no offensive threats, and that really leaves you only with a bunch of like reactive cards. And since John realizes how important the Delver is, especially in a leyline match, that's just like the best way to buy so much more time. And now we actually draw the Urza Saga, and I wonder... I mean, we're probably not running it out because then we're basically trading both of our lands to the Wasteland. I could be wrong, but I'd be surprised. Okay.
Yeah, and check this out too. The patience on this Wasteland not going after something like the City of Traders looks... I mean, it feels like Greer-Stokes here very rewarded for not using the Wasteland earlier. I mean, I know I certainly would have pulled the trigger much sooner and would have looked certainly much more foolish here, realizing that, Urza Saga is the important card. You see Brainstorm on the stack here, surveilling a Mystic Sanctuary into the graveyard.
And guess what, NRG? We are back to the value. We're back to the race, the actual race, the monkey against the Dragon Rage channeler. And
so
right
funny.
now, John is just like so much more ahead in the actual race. But Greer must find something eventually, and I still wonder whether we will eventually get to the point where the Hydroblast is actually going to go, oh, there's a Diver. That's amazing. Okay, that's a really good one. I was wondering whether the Hydroblast will eventually target the Simian Spirit Guide.
I feel like it's going to happen. I feel like at some point, Greer-Stokes is going to just be like, I'm tired of this. Enough is enough. Get this monkey out of my... Yeah.
I mean, it's also kind of cool. Initially, I was surprised that John attacked here because John could just like sit back and hope that the Diver doesn't flip and then like the opponent doesn't deal any damage. On the other hand, if you get Greer down to like say 6, ideally 3 life, then all of a sudden like your top deck lightning bolts that you play 3 copies of are live. I mean, they already are because they would take out the Diver. But let's see. I'm also wondering, is that a Soul Guide Lantern in John's hand? Because if it was, I would have expected him to cycle it a lot earlier. But maybe it's it's a Mox Opal. Okay.
Opal, yeah. Okay, well, there's the lightning bolt you were talking about. Here it is, Hydroblast son. All right, I round of applause here. Round of applause here for the world's best Simian Spirit Guide.
And everybody give it up for the monkey.
For real, right? Now, here's an interesting question. Is this Forcible even castable? You can see Hydroblast there. Very good against red spells, and we've seen an uptick in Hydroblast in the format thanks to Expressive Iteration and Pyroblast. And Lightning Bolt actually going to resolve here. Fascinating.
You know what? I think maybe there are not enough lands that we can fetch. I'm not sure.
Well, I know for a fact that one Mystic Sanctuary is in exile. Now the
And
Steam
Vents
Benson
in the
is
graveyard as
exile.
well. Yeah, there might just like not be enough lands to fetch to hardcast a Force of Will at this point.
We may have accidentally taken our last land and put it into exile. There might be more. You never know.
Yeah, chat is talking about hardcast Murktide, but if we actually got rid of so many of our lands, the only way to still hardcast Murktide would be to draw a bunch of more like wastelands, I guess.
The Wasteland would be the other one, yeah. And we've already used at least one.
Ooh, and now we got the Pyroblast. Pyroblast is really good because that makes it so that Greer is not going to be able to add to the beatdown all that much. Do you counter this brainstorm? This is one of those. Usually you don't, right? But right now it feels like maybe you do.
Okay. Well, we're getting word here that the Pioneer match has actually finished, so it really does depend on if the players are going to continue playing or not. I would love to see how this match finishes playing out. And in fact, I don't know, production, if it's possible to just ask the players if they want to continue playing that match, because that was pretty sweet and it was going back and forth there. But if not, we will have a player interview lined up. We'll find out what's going on pretty shortly. But this is just the nature of the team setup. Sometimes was that if your teammates finish playing before you do, and as is often to happen with Legacy specifically, your games are a bit more interactive, a bit grindier, if you will, so they take longer. Okay, so it looks like production is going to ask and find out if what the status is on on that game, if the players want to play it. I really hope they do, because it's such a sweet game that was going on when literal Simian Spirit Guide was just like going to town and got Hydro Blasted. It actually was worth the card. So it's interesting because okay, no, it looks like we do have a player interview coming in as the players are seated, and yeah. So that is fascinating. Well, we'll actually find out who won, because even at this point yet, we haven't been updated on whether mono white or mono green won. So we're gonna walk into this a little bit blind, but like, all right, yeah, hello, which team is this? You know, that kind of deal. Like,
so which deck did you play? Oh, okay, sure, sounds good. Tell us about it.
Well, we will wait for our director to come back, and in the meantime,
have we sold you on Painter?
Oh yeah. Oh, I played Painter once, and I went 3-2 because I was a complete goofball. But there are a lot of in a league. I played it once in a league, and I went 3-2 because I goofed up. But the whole vibe of the deck is like there's just so much cool stuff to do, right? Like Bray's Apprentice, Goblin Welder, even like Urza Saga, really cool Fable. This is a really good Fable deck. That's another thing that I really like. And then just like I've seen a lot of really good Painter players play, like Jack Kitchen, you know, even like Matt Soleil at some point went to the thing. Okay, and it looks like players are actually ready. So let's go ahead and cut to that first, and we'll talk about this stuff a little bit. And congratulations, Anthony and Max, on winning. Okay, so catching me up here. So Max, you were playing Pioneer. Anthony, you were playing Modern, correct?
I'm Dominic, and I'm playing Modern. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay.
You got the formats right.
That's okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll take it. 50%. That's
Yeah.
way better than my average anyway. So cool. We'll take it. But congratulations on the win here. So
Thank
why
you.
don't we start with Pioneer, because we got to watch. A little bit of the mono white versus mono green matchup. We dialed in on game number 2, I believe, which was looking a little bit grim for the mono white side of things. Talk to me about that matchup a little bit. You know, in that game 2 board state, what were your thoughts? What were some of the cards you were looking for? Because you had a very aggressive start, but then there was a turn 3, you know, old growth troll off of a Wolf Willow Haven. No third land, but just like the Wolf Willow. So what was your thought process there?
So yeah, in game 2, they were on the play. My opponent was on the play, and they were able to get off to a pretty quick start. I had mulliganed. I didn't have the best hand, so I was able to get some guys on the board, but I kept a hand without removal, didn't draw into any. So it was the kind of situation where the troll is just going to stonewall my entire board. So wasn't really able to get anything. I kind of just had to sit for several turns, and my opponent just kind of did the mono green thing, got a really high devotion, got a Nykthos, and just played a million things, and there was just no way I was going to even build up enough of a board to do anything.
I see it. But game 3 looked a lot better. I mean, you're here in the winner's seat now at 4-0. So talk to me about what happened in game 3 there. Catch us up, because we were a little bit lost in the sauce, if you will, watching the Delver versus Painter matchup, which was pretty sweet. But yeah, talk to me about game 3. Were things a little bit different there?
Yeah, definitely. So for starters, I was on the play. I kept a really good 6-card hand. It was Plains, a Mutavault, Hopeful Initiate, Thalia, and 2 Brutal Cathars. So I felt like if I draw into the third land, I'm gonna have a really great curve. But getting to go Hopeful Initiate into Thalia is gonna slow them down. quite a bit. My opponent didn't have a turn 1 elf, so those 2 guys to start were really strong. I ended up drawing a Kythian, and then I ended up being able to flip it pretty quickly. And again, my opponent just kind of stumbled. Never drew the 3rd land, but I didn't really need it. I just had a fast start. They had a slow start. He was on a mulligan as well, and I was pretty much just able to run him over through what he was able to do.
Yeah, that's something that I had noticed about like mono white specifically, is just like in general, like even in Legacy and even in Modern and now even more so in Pioneers, just the way this deck is constructed usually is you provide enough pressure, but there's that secondary aspect. You're not like a mono red deck. You have enough of that disruptive ability. So talk to me about like some of like the other disruptive elements in that matchup that you look forward to drawing. Like you mentioned Thalia, that's a great one. Is there anything else that's super key in the matchup that you want to see in the early game?
I think the key in the matchup is starting out just basically having a curve 1, 2, 3. They usually don't get a blocker down that quickly. Maybe they get troll, but oftentimes not. You have to take a good chunk of their life total off to begin with, maybe get them down to like somewhere in the 10, 12 range. And then they'll try to stabilize, and hopefully the disruption basically will either be removal if it's just 1 or 2 guys and you can kind of just push through enough damage, or you just brave the elements. You know, you might be, there are definitely play patterns where you take a good chunk of their life total and you're staring at each other, but you're also playing guys that whole time, and you just have like 20 power on board as the mono white player. You just go brave and you just attack and can win. So not necessarily disruption per se, but you kind of have to take that first chunk, and then you have to find a way to sort of finish them off.
That's what I was wondering in the second game, right? In the second game, you weren't really able to get that first chunk because there was the troll, and the opponent was sitting at, I think, like 19 or 18 the entire time. And NRG and I, we are both not Pioneer experts, and we were wondering, is there still a way for you to get back into the game once you have not dealt that initial chunk of damage, and you also don't have like this super critical mass where you get there with brave the elements? Is there still a way to climb back into the game, or is the deck just like straight up not constructed to even win those games, and you're like aiming to win the other, I don't know, 80% of games where that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is pretty much no. I think what would have to happen is like they don't put any pressure on me, and I get, you know, nearly 20 power worth of creatures and brave, but like that's really a stretch at that point. And also my opponent had a 1/1 white human from Lovestruck Beast, so even if I brave for green, they have a chumper for my Adeline, and it just, when it just gets to that point, it's near impossible unless just something very bizarre happens.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Let's pan over to Modern. So Dominic, thank you so much for joining us. So we didn't actually get to watch your match, but from what I recall, it was the 5-color creativity mirror match. Is that correct?
I was actually I'm on Golgari Yawgmoth, and my opponent's on 5-color creativity.
Let me double check my.
Yeah, it's Golgari Yawgmoth over there. And that deck is exciting to me, dude. I can't help it. When I first got into like, when I caught up with Modern like half a year ago, and I was like, okay, let's find out how this format works. I used to be really into it. I saw this deck, and this deck plays 4 copies of Yawgmoth, and I was like, there's no way I'm ever gonna play this deck. Like, what is going on here? But this deck is really good. Every time you have it on camera, it does some really busted stuff, and sell me on it. I have a really big Modern tournament coming up, and I still haven't picked a deck for it yet. This is very much in the contention for it.
I'll resell myself on it. Or the thing that resold myself on it was I put another copy of Endurance in the main, so I have 2 copies of Endurance in the main, so I can go from a board of exactly Yawgmoth, 2 Undying Dudes, as long as one doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, and Essence Warden, and I'll have enough mana to cord out for a Blood Artist, because I can just pick up my deck. Even if I draw the Blood Artist or the Geralf's Messenger, I can go to the end step, I can discard them into the graveyard, and I can Endurance on my opponent's turn to shuffle them back into my graveyard or back into my library, and then cord something back out to like finish the kill. It's like, it always has like these like weird sort of slippery angles that a lot of people, I think, it like wins in ways that I think people aren't necessarily always expecting. I think my friend and I were talking, or like Max and I were talking like the other week at the last event. We were like, you just win at like weird steps of the game. Like I think we were playing each other in the
he beat me during my combat.
Yeah,
step.
right. Like it was like his. It was like the Declare Blocker's step of his attack or his combat step. So it's just like, it's one of those really funny decks, and it works a lot like the core decks of old in a way, where you've got some toolbox elements, but you also have a lot of redundancy to find your combo pieces.
Okay, honestly, I gotta say, that's a little bit intimidating. Like the lines that you just described, I'm all about that stuff once I understand it. But when you described it, I was like, dude, I'm not sure I would have even seen that kind of like, this is, did you win a lot of games where you feel like your opponents weren't always fully aware of what you're capable of? Because they look at your board and it's just like you described, like 2 Undying Dudes, and then that's it, or maybe a Yawgmoth. and then you're like, you know what? Actually, during your attack step, I'm just gonna kill you straight away.
Yeah.
Just like that. Nothing personal.
I think so. And I think what ends up happening is that people aren't totally sure what they need to be playing around and like what my chord targets could be at any one given time. And also endurance, because you can pitch cast endurance and that can act as an extra mana to chord. It's kind of hidden when you can chord for more, like you're sort of representing less than you would normally be able to chord for, because you can pitch cast endurance and gain like a mana that way. So I think that's something. And then the beatdown element of the deck is like something that I downplay a lot. Like I probably don't focus on it as much as I should, but I think that's like a lesser known way the deck. I mean, sometimes you can just beat them down with Strangleroot Geist, and like that does work sometimes.
Let me ask you a little bit more about the matchup in general. So you were playing Yawgmoth. Your opponent was on creativity, though, right? How do you feel about that matchup? And what are some of the key elements? Because I know, we've seen a lot of curves, or like the play draw like matter a lot, where, you might go Ignoble Hierarch, but if you're on the draw, a Renin 6 can come down and just ping that, take care of that. How do you handle that? What's your approach there? Were you on the play?
I was on the play, so yeah. So I was on the play games one and I was on the draw game 2 actually. So yeah. So what tends to happen is that they kind of have two different sort of types of draws. They tend to either have an early creativity, or they kind of have these sort of like, I wouldn't call them dirtle cards, but like cards that like have accrue some kind of value that don't necessarily play to their exact plan. Like you mentioned Renin 6, like that's a huge card because obviously it can just kill pretty much all of my dorks, and I kind of need a critical mass of those guys on the board in order to be able to do a lot of the things that the deck does. So if they go Ren down tick, hopefully I have a Strangleroot Geist set up to kill the Ren. That's usually the line that I would most like to be set up. Otherwise, though, the matchup is generally like me trying to get enough dudes on the board and have a Yawgmoth so that I can kill their token in response to their creativity. Generally, they're not going to run out creativity in that type of a situation, but like just the posturing of having Yawgmoth plus some creatures is enough to prevent them from having to cast creativity. But they have a very good removal suite against me, like things like Fire, Ice. I don't know if some of them might play like Boom Bust or like even Fury and things like that. And you mentioned Renin 6, like all of those are like very good cards against a deck full of like X1s predominantly. So it's a lot of back and forth. It's pretty dynamic. I would say the matchup is pretty even to maybe even a little favored for Yawg. I think post board I pick up things like Force of Vigor, which can kind of put them off of Leyline Binding and can kill like Fable. But I mean, if they put a Archon onto the battlefield, it's very hard for me to deal with. I literally basically need Grist in those moments in order to be able to down tick Grist and kill the Archon, or the Archon's just going to run away with the game.
Yeah, wow, that's very, very powerful. Okay, I got one last question for the two of you, and this is just more of like a flavor thing, but what are the best cards in each of your decks? What has overperformed for you this weekend so far? I'll either answer first is cool. Hit me.
Man, Kythian's been awesome for me. I mean, I think a lot of the stock lists for that of humans that people have been playing have been going 3 Soldier of the Pantheon, 1 Kythian. I've loved a 2-2 split. Kythian flips a lot more than you would expect. The indestructible activated ability will catch people off guard. I flipped it. I feel like I flipped it at least 2 times already today, and just getting that 4/4 that they have to deal with, that they can't really block effectively with anything, has just been great. So I don't know if it's the best on average. That might just be Brave the Elements, but Kythian has been really overperforming for me.
Very awesome. How about you, Dom?
Probably the most individually powerful card is Chord. That's not too exciting by itself. I would say the thing that has overperformed for me for the past couple months actually has been Turok Dread Cantor. It wasn't previously in the sideboard of the deck until about, I think, July of this year, and then it started to appear in sideboards, and it's just felt like gas pretty much every time I've drawn it. I've been able to maneuver the game in a way where I can cast it with the kicker, and the opponent will discard most of their hand actually by the late to mid game stage. So it's been very good in every situation in which I've brought it in and I've drawn it.
Well, awesome. That is excellent. So thank you. Congratulations to your team for advancing to 4-0 here at the NRG trial in Fort Wayne. And good luck in the next few rounds upcoming. I guess you guys technically have a win in it if you can get IDs figured out. But either way, just win everything. Looking forward to see you all in the top 8. Now, back to the booth we go. We are time has been called in the round. We do have a couple things to talk about before we cut to break here. All right. So first off, if you are familiar with the NRG series, you know that this is not a one and done event. We have a lot of events coming up through the year here. So welcome back. This is season 3, the overview look here. There are 4 primary events. We've finished the team event in Newark. We're here today in Fort Wayne, but we have 2 more events upcoming. The first is going to be in the Chicagoland area. You can see in the bottom left here, we got a slide forward to at the end of this month. In the Chicagoland area, we have a 10K, our first Pioneer $10,000 event. Yes, let's go. And then also we have a Sunday Modern 5K trial. Now keep in mind, the winner of the sorry, not this event. This is the 15K event that is happening. Yeah, okay, sorry. I'm with myself here. Yeah, so these will give you points that'll translate into the overall series here. But there's one event coming afterwards, the Modern and Pioneer December NRG Series Showdown. And this is going to be a $20,000 weekend event. We have the 15K Modern event on Saturday, and then the 5K Sunday trial. The winner of the Saturday 15K trial will qualify for the Winter 2023 or the 2022 leadership event that is happening in winter of 2023. And so, or I guess I'd say like in January. Let's just like that keeps it simple. I think I'm overcomplicating it, but that's going to be the second weekend of December there. So if you're near the Louisville area, feel free to show up and play in that event. You get a chance to qualify for the championship series. Now, speaking of the championship series. Well, what is that? Well, that is the end of year culmination for all the events that NRG has been hosting throughout, whether that's been in Mundelein, whether that's in Kentucky, whether that's even in Fort Wayne, wherever it might be, right? The best players who have performed the best throughout the week, that's where they show up to play, and it's going to be incredible. Let's take a look at some of the players who are going to be in this event, just so you understand, or even the leaderboard, which is the qualification route to that. So you'll see some names in orange here: Ivan Espinoza, Andrew Ellenbogen. These 2 players are already qualified, and I can tell you, these 2 players are really good Magic players. That's basically like the average level of competition, just insane players. But other ways to qualify, if you have enough points at the end of each season, you can see Zach Allen, 48 points, Raja Suleiman, 42 points, Mac Endress, 28 points. These are the players that are competing for that at-large slot here. We'll take a look at the overarching year-long leaderboard race too, because a couple players from here as well will be qualified as well. Jesse Robkin, Joseph Bernal, Piper Powell. These players in orange are already qualified, but you could see they have so many points because they have spent the entire year grinding, making a name for themselves on the NRG series circuit. Zoe Reederman, Zach Allen, names that we have seen many, many times, also in potential to play in the end of year championship event. So we know a couple of the players here. Let's see the full list of players. Who will you be competing with if you do win that season 3 showdown? If you do have a lot of points here, and this is a stacked roster. Ivan Espinoza, the returning champion, Piper Powell, the season 1 showdown champion, Joe Bernal, Andrew Ellenbogen, Connor Mullally, Theo Jung, Max Kaminowski, Jesse Robkin, Zach Dubin. These are some of the best players on the circuit, and this is the average level of competition. So even if you can't make it to this event, this is the event of the year to watch, because it's going to have, on average, such high quality level of competition. You can see there's a lot more slots left to give out here to reward the players that do really well in season 3, but also to reward the players who have been doing very well over the years. So that's just the high level overview. I know you have all been taking really good notes, Julian. I'm going to quiz you about this afterwards, to make sure you're on the same page here. But we're going to come back to the booth. And yeah, looks like time is in the round. We are probably going to cut towards a break now as we get ready for the last round for Julian and I, round number 5 here. Afterwards, we'll have Mason Clark and Devin O'Donnell, both very, very talented Modern, Pioneer, and Legacy players. Looking forward to that. For now, refill your popcorn buckets, get something to drink, and we'll see you in just a second. Don't go anywhere.